It's rock and roll.
Welcome to the Look It's Rock and Roll podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Julian, and I'm joined by him, the wild man, Andy, and we've got Bill back for another episode of a W.A.S.P chat. And today, Andy, which album are we going to talk about?
The concept album, the awesome concept album, the Crimson Idol, and the story.
I thought we were talking about Golgotha.
What?
Oh, that's what I got on my paper here.
Oh, no.
Here we go. We're talking about The Idol. That's not working so good. So I've got both versions up. I've got ReIdolized up. I've got Crimson Idol. Let's start with the basics here. We'd like to always talk about what someone's introduction was to this particular album. I'm going to go first this week because in 1992, I did not buy the Crimson Idol. I skipped it because I was coming back to Scotland from America. I'd been living in Pennsylvania at the time. I'd gotten kicked out of Penn State and went back to Glasgow and kind of dropped out of music. And I'd buy Kerrangs and I'd see all the ads for the singles, Chainsaw Charlie, I Am, whatever. See, that's my familiarity with the album. I Am One, thank you. So I skipped it. And my first time I actually experienced any of the songs from it was, I think, in 1993 when First Blood came out, the Hits album. So it was 1999 when the double CD came out. I'll see if my background will screw it up. I still have this because it's a promo from Snapper.
Give it to me.
Was the first time. Well, I've started trying to peel off the silly promo sticker if it will.
Don't do that.
Just hold it in front of your face, and that's when it'll stay there. So.
Yeah. So I didn't listen to the album until the double CD edition came out in 1998, 99, something like that, whenever it was. And by that time, they'd added on all the bonus tracks that had been released on B-sides of the singles. So I never really got to experience the Crimson Idol in its original format until we decided to do this chat about W.A.S.P and go through the album. So that was my introduction to it, late 90s, long after it had been a going concern. And obviously being in Europe, Metal Hammer and Kerrang and all the music mags that we had out there, I was always seeing Blackie in them at the time, but I just kind of lost interest. I was listening to a lot of Megadeth and Nirvana, of all things, because that was kind of what I'd gotten into in Pennsylvania before moving back. So
that's what's wrong with Penn State. They get you hooked on Nirvana.
Well, no, I'd already been kicked out by the time Nirvana came out. So Penn State, and it wasn't State College, Pennsylvania. I always have to stress that. I had gotten suckered into going. I applied from Singapore, where I'd finished high school, and I got suckered into going to an associate campus in Throop, Pennsylvania, which is near Scranton. Okay. So way up north. I thought Scranton, it was near to Binghamton, where I'd lived 10 years in the late 70s through the late 80s. So I was like, it's near to Binghamton. I'll be able to go see all my friends who were all gone by then. And I didn't have a car, and I didn't know how to drive, and it didn't work out. It was a nightmare. Throop, Pennsylvania. No offense to anyone who lives in Throop, but I'm not a big fan of Scranton.
See, my sister... We were born and bred Buckeye fans, being from Ohio. And my sister loved her to death, but by gosh, she managed to do everything wrong because she married a guy from Michigan and then moved to Pennsylvania. So now her daughter lives in a state college. So her daughter roots for Penn State, and she has to secretly root for the Buckeyes. But
yep, I do not.
That comes with
I never rooted for Penn State. I always rooted for Syracuse, always will. So, Bill, let's start with you. What was your first introduction to Crimson Idol and your initial impressions of the album when you first heard it?
Crimson Idol was a funny one because I had to buy it as an import. because it wasn't released on a U.S. Because if mine shows up, I'll try it. I'll pull the CD out here. It's CD up here. Notice up here it says Parlophone, which is the EMI label that the Beatles were on. So I had to buy this as an import. It wasn't released in the United States, to my knowledge. What label is yours on, Andy?
I can't even see you. Anyways, my CD says Capitol.
Okay, see, mine says Parlophone. I bought it as an import before Capitol put it out.
Well, you know me. It's either the Kiss thing or the W.A.S.P thing. I'm there. I don't wait.
Yeah. Well, it just wasn't available. That's the thing is I did go to a record store and order this to get it. So I was ready for it when it came out. It wasn't publicized worth anything around me. I never saw it in the rock mags or anything like that. For all I knew, W.A.S.P was done. But then I got some inside information that it was coming out. I can't remember how. But I went to a record store and ordered it. And so are we still giving my first thoughts on it?
Yeah, what was your initial impression? I mean, obviously, as someone who'd been a fan of the band through the 80s, into Headless Cross, here's a 3-year gap that you kind of lost track of what Blackie was doing. I don't remember even reading much news about him in the interim. For you just mentioned that you had some inside knowledge that it was coming out. So what was your impression of it when you spun it in the deck, or...
Well, I wasn't impressed with it because everything started off with an acoustic guitar, and I wasn't as well versed in everything else that I know now. But it just it wasn't a CD you could throw in and pump your fist to right out of the box, because the first 3 or 4 minutes of it are acoustic battle, and then the next 3 songs all start acoustically, and it's kind of like, well, what's left with this? But then when you get playing through it, it sounds like a W.A.S.P album. It sounds just as much like Inside the Electric Circus, and maybe a little bit more like Last Command, but definitely detailed lyrics. And the lyrics the vocals seem kind of buried on it. But I do remember, and this is going to be a sparring point between me and Mr. Andy. I do remember that when they publicized it, that Bob Kulick's playing on the new W.A.S.P album, and of course, as a young guy, it's like, oh, well, Bob Kulick's playing with W.A.S.P now. This is going to be awesome. And that didn't turn out to be the case. It's a miracle they made it through the album anyway. But, that was another turn on. It's like, hey, the guy that, played for Ace Frehley is now playing for Chris Holmes. So, but yeah, it was a good album, but it was just not something you could throw in a jam to.
Yeah, completely fair enough. All right, Andy, when did you get it, and what did you think about it? Go.
All right, now we're just gonna go back a little bit, because when the Headless Children was released, right? The Headless. Here's my note. I actually wrote notes for this, and I never do, because there's so many different versions of everything. Now, remember when the Headless Children came out, and you absolutely went crazy for the album, and you just like, wow, this is off the hook. This is absolutely nuts. And that came out in I got my little thing here, man. That's pretty bad. I don't remember this stuff off the top. April 15th of '89. Okay, and then it was a tour, which was, there wasn't like a huge tour either. It was awesome and stuff. Don't get me wrong, it was all awesome. I loved it. But then, '88, you got '89, '90. What happened? '91. What happened? '92. Next thing you know, here it comes. All of a sudden, W.A.S.P, this new album comes out, and it came out in June 8th of '92. So you're almost talking, almost 2.5 years later? So when it came out, it was like, you go to the store and you're like, holy crap, it's a W.A.S.P album. When did this come out? Where? Well, what the hell just happened? And back then still, right, the net wasn't really that big still, right? The internet, YouTube, all that stuff, right?
That didn't exist.
YouTube,
internet didn't really start until '94. Before that, '93, most people had to dial up into private BBSs and stuff. So there wasn't anything. There wasn't any way to know about these things.
And I didn't really, I know people say, oh, MTV, the late stuff, the rock stuff at night. That that MTV crap, that was full of crap. Those guys played the same freaking videos, 10 or 15 videos every weekend, or was it every Friday or Saturday night? MTV, you're like, oh yeah, the metal rock thing. You know, you're praying that they're gonna show something really good or something different, and they never did. Hardly ever did. You know, unless the record company, right? The record company basically paid them to play. Now it's the other way around. You pay them to play. So, you know, vice versa. But, so you never heard anything about W.A.S.P. really at all. And all of a sudden you go to the store and you get this album, and I'm like, holy crap, it's a W.A.S.P. album, number one. I'm like, is that Blackie on the cover again? Not the old man, you know? Now think about it too, is that we just heard and saw an awesome lineup of W.A.S.P. You know? The Headless Children, Chris. I mean, it's just fantastic. And then all of a sudden, you get this album, and you look at it, and you're like, "Wait a minute, is that Blackie on the front cover? You can't. He sort of looks like him, but it might not be him. It might be that other kid. It might be the kid who played Jonathan or the guy." And then all of a sudden, you look inside, you're like, "Wait a minute, Blackie, lead vocalist, lead rhythm, bass guitars, what? Keyboards, what?" Then all of a sudden, you go Steph Howard and Frankie Banella playing drums. So you're like, hey, I know those two names, you know? And then all of a sudden you read it and you look deeper and you're like, holy crap, Bob Kulick's playing lead guitar. And then you're like, and then you scratch your head and you go, what happened? What happened to Johnny Rod? What happened to Chris Holmes? I mean, what happened? There was never any explanation. Wait a minute, there might be videos out there now to explain. Actually, I don't think there is. I don't think
there actually is one. There's one I saw actually when we were researching for Headless Children. It was an interview with Blackie, and he said that he played. Now I'm like Julian forgetting titles. Hold On to My Heart. He played Hold On to My Heart for Chris, and Chris looked like him, you know, a deer in the headlights. He had no response to it, and he said that was basically the linchpin for the two of them separating on this album.
Now, when I got the album, I'm like listening to it. I'm like, this is kind of interesting. You know, like you said, Bill. It's not like, you know, it's not like a, I don't know, Pick a Pop or whatever. It's not like a Lick It Up or Heaven's Own Fire. You know what I mean? It's not. It doesn't have. It's not that kind of. But it's not that kind of album. It's a concept album, right? It's kind of like, I don't want to say it's like it. It's not. But I mean, The Elder, right? Kiss the Elder, right? It doesn't. Well, it does. But I mean, at least Kiss with the Elder, they actually did A World Without Heroes. They came on Solid Gold. They did stuff. The W.A.S.P. thing never.
It's much more like another concept album. I can either bring it up now or later. Tommy, you know, it just screams Who. The whole album does. But yeah.
Well, I mean, when you listen to it, you're like, wow, this is pretty cool. But the thing is, it's one of those albums. Well, it's a concept album, so it's not just like a regular. It's either you get it or you don't. That's the thing behind this whole album when it came out. You either get it or you don't. Now, for the original one is, you know, and then you think about it, I'm like, oh my God, Bob Kulick's playing on it. Bob Kulick played on some Kiss stuff. So I'm like, wow, here we go. And you know that, you know, Blackie and Ace were friends too. So you're like, wow, there's a lot of kind of connections in that Kiss W.A.S.P. area for me. So I was like, wow, this is pretty cool. And then you start listening to it, and like you said, it's got a lot of slower stuff in the beginning before they get into the song. But then when you start doing the story, which on the original one, or you say the original one, the original Crimson Idol, is that Blackie doesn't tell the story like on the CD. It's written inside. You know, you got to read the whole, like you did when you were a kid. You know, you read the whole pamphlet. It tells you the story. You know, so I mean, that part of it is kind of like, wow, is it Blackie's life? Is it there? To me, it sounds kind of like it's supposed to be sort of a fictional character, Jonathan, but it almost sounds like Blackie's life, moving from New York City to California, and then looking over that rise and saying, "Here I come, you know, I'm gonna come kick some ass," you know. And this is, you know, so I mean, I don't know when you listen to it, and I. You know, there might be people's real lives like this. When you start thinking about it, if you stop thinking that deep, I wonder if this, you know, this people, this, you know, I've been on W.A.S.P., as I said, for a long time. So there's, you know, Facebook pages and other pages. And there are people who said that this CD like made them really think deep. You know, this CD made people really think deep. You know, and some people went through some of this stuff that's on this CD. You know, in their real lives. This. Are we getting into the story about Jonathan? You know, I mean, Julia, what do you want? You want to get into the story about Jonathan, the whole story, or we just kind of just
well, I think we should talk about the concept, and Bill, you raised the point of Tommy. I don't get any of that out of the concept, and I never did. Again, when I started listening to it, it really just seemed to be a collection of songs very loosely connected. Just the themes are kind of pretty broad that he kind of touches on. So I never, when I compare it to those bands that did concept albums, the Rushes, obviously Tommy, I think there's only one song where I actually think that this is like really concept-y, and that's because of a guitar solo to me that sounds very David Gilmour-ish. So that's the only time I ever get near thinking of this as a concept. Yeah, there's like little pieces of narration and introduction to some songs that flesh out and try and make it stick, but it doesn't really have an ending as such. I mean, what I would have thought
not a happy one anyway.
Well, not a very happy one at all.
There is an ending. He, as much as that he hated his dad actually he loved his dad. The story, he loved his dad and still worshipped his dad because he always said, "This is my dad." But his dad hated him, tortured him, beat him, and then at the end of the story, it's like, okay, he wasn't actually the idol and stuff like that. His father was still king. So it doesn't matter how bad that the kid or Jonathan or whatever got whipped, beat on shit, that his father, that he still loved his father in the long run. And, it's kind of, I said, so I said some of these songs, probably there are a lot of people who relate to some of these songs. I mean, I'm not going to complain. I had a great childhood when I grew up. Some of this shit is deep, man. And I didn't go through any of this kind of stuff in ways, I'm serious. I know, but there's people out there that have, I'm thank God or thank whoever that I had a great childhood life, Well,
and you don't have to necessarily go step by step and match, in lockstep with what they go through, but it's like, it's like the alienation, the neglect, more people do that than people who are neglected and beaten. And that's just a variation on the form of neglect that he got, or, all the attention he got was bad or anything like that. But the whole thing and I understand Julian's point, because Julian, in 1992, I was exactly where you were. I didn't really get this opinion of it until I started sitting down, looking at the lyric book, and like Last Command is a put it in the car stereo, crank it up, and party with your dudes kind of album. This is a cerebral, sit down, put the headphones on, immerse yourself in the album, ignore everything the wife's saying, no matter if it's dinner's ready or not. You're sitting there reading through everything and just taking in the whole story visually and audibly and all that. And once you do that, you'll see more of those connections.
Oh, definitely, like you said, Bill, it's not a, hey, let's throw it in, let's party with it. It's basically you get it or you don't.
Yeah, it's a very difficult album to just like throw in and say skip 4 tracks, and that kind of throws you then, because you can't just go to kind of the hits, even though I guess they kind of did that when they went on tour. They only played like 5 songs from it. But it's not one that lends itself to the songs, particularly being good standalone rock songs. I mean, Bill, what you just said about, or I can't remember which one of you said it, about Last Command, being kind of the party album that you just put in and go. That's a completely different kind of listening experience to this. And that's what I find awkward about it. And then, because obviously I didn't listen to the original version back in 92, I'm always kind of polluted by all these other songs that are on the 2 CD version that came out much later. I mean, Eulogy. which to me would be a very fitting end to the whole thing, because it kind of brings it to a close in a way that The Great Misconception of Me doesn't. And then Phantoms in the Mirror, which he should have played that for Chris, because that sounds like a Headless Children leftover musically. You know, and fit that in. It's like, why are those two songs in particular bonus tracks and not included in the story? Because they both seem to have more of an important part to the story than just leaving the rest of the tracks on their own.
Because that's a big question. And I'm sorry. Go ahead, Andy.
The Phantoms, though, if you listen to it, it's got bits and pieces of songs that have been upgraded. It's got like the Charlie and the Chainsaw. It's got some of the the parts in it. So I think it's more of a, you're in the studio, you're playing it. Yeah, this might work. And I think the Phantom is pieces of other songs, from other songs. So I think that's why I got left off, because you could definitely hear some of the, like I said, Charlie and Chainsaw's one and some of the other stuff. So, but, and then, we're just talking about the original version, the 10 to 10 to, I would call it the original, but short version of this whole album, right? When you call it that, the kind of the shorter, the short of the story, the concept album, really, because it really becomes the concept album way later on. The ReIdolized basically is a real, heavy, more deep into it, or I would say, or the extras finally put in there,
Yeah, he ReIdolizes a fleshing out of the story, probably with 25 years of hindsight of listening to people like me saying, well, I don't get that. What happened? How does it tie together? And he resequenced the story in ReIdolized. And, let's talk about that later, towards the end, and just get your thoughts on ReIdolized, because I really want to focus just on this original recording.
Well, me personally, I love the original recording, point blank. Bob Kulick, freaking phenomenal. And I, as you know, I've seen Bob. I've met Bob a bunch of times. Every time I see Bob, even from the beginning, I would take the Crimson Idol with me or something. And I mentioned it all the time. Hey, man, how was it to work with Blackie? And he would just say, only once or twice, he'd say, well, you know how singers are. I'm thinking to myself, and I told him one time, I'm like, no, I don't. I don't know how singers are. Tell me, something, but he never did. So Bob never actually said how it was working in the studio with him. But me personally, maybe it's because that was the original one I got. And I know we'll talk about the other ones later after this. But for me, man, the original one, even though it's the shorter version, is kick-ass. Bob, I think it's one of Bob's greatest works ever. The song "The Idol," unbelievable solo. Are we going track by track, or are we just skipping?
Skip around to the favorites and the ones that you want to talk about. There's no need to go in order. If you start talking about one song, just give us a chance to, both chime in on it as well.
Well, but, I know the overtone thing is just a kind of, a little bit musical, but for the people who might not understand this, the second song is called "The Invisible Boy." And basically, this is where the father ignores him, the parents ignore him, they're wicked religious freakouts. I know those kind of people. Cuckoo. Anyways, him and his brother, right? His brother was the one. His brother was the number one. Jonathan was number two, and a piece of crap, basically. And they tortured the kid. So either by physically or mental abuse and everything else. So basically, the kid takes off. Jonathan takes off, and basically takes off. I'm just going to say it's Blackie in a way, from New York or wherever he's taken off to California. And he looks over the arena, which is the original arena of pleasure. That's what I call it. The arena of pleasure, and sees, hey, here I am, California, bingo. And then he meets what's his name, Stalwart there. Charlie Chainsaw Murders in the New Morgue, basically meaning this guy could screw over more people in the music business than he could be a lawyer. So basically, you sign your name on the dotted line, and I'll use you, abuse you, take all your money, and then run away. Which, how many record labels did that? Blackie was right on, right? Wasn't he? Bingo. And then what happens? Blackie ends up meeting a gypsy on the street. Gives the fortune teller, Jonathan, fortune teller. He's going to be the one. He's going to be, go from nothing to blown up. This huge rock star. huge rock star. And of course, what happens when you come this huge rock star back, especially back then? All of a sudden, you get sucked into drugs, right? Doctor, rocker. There you go, partying all the time, doing all kinds of crazy stuff. And then the I am one basically means I'm the king. Here I am. I'm the one and only. And then, of course, the Idol, which is my totally favorite song off this whole album, point blank.
Good. Stop there. The
Yep.
Idol. Bill,
Yep.
your thoughts on the Idol? Because my notes, as far as writing down thoughts about some of these songs, I wasn't able to actually write a lot about these. They just didn't kind of tend to lead themselves for me wanting to write an essay about them. I just wrote for the Idol, stunning song with a fantastic solo.
Definitely.
And it's
definitely a stunning song.
It's the one that I've referred to that I get kind of Floyd, Gilmore phrasing in part of that solo, which is the only thing, again, like I said earlier, that ties it to, a concept in a way for me. What's your take on the Idol? And it was a single as well.
And that's the thing is, where was it a single at? Because it certainly wasn't a single in Ohio. It's a great song, but the bad thing is now that I'm kind of soaked into the concept and really digging into it, it was kind of like it fits perfectly into the story flow, and it is a spectacular song with a great solo. And I'm with Andy. Did you say the Invisible Boy had a great solo in it too? That's a pretty happening solo in it. But as far as the Idol, I'm having a problem taking it out of the context of the whole album picture to just kind of think about. I didn't find anything memorable in this. It's like the whole orchestration was great, but as far as picking out 16 bars where this really blew me away, it didn't happen. But it fit contextually amongst the other songs.
In my second favorite song off there is "Hold On to My Heart." Classic.
That's a great,
freaking classic 80s metal, power ballad, whatever you want to call it. Totally off the hook. And I had that played at the wedding. Woohoo! Great.
It totally sticks out like a sore thumb on this album. In the middle of this album, in the middle of all these screaming guitars, you've got "Hold On to My Heart," which is also a single, not in Ohio.
Well, now the thing with "Hold On to My Heart" is what context you put it in. Because I watched the DVD that come with the album that we're not going to be able to talk about until later, and with the "Hold On to My Heart" portion, where it sounds like a love song, it is a love song, but I don't think it's a romantic love song. I think that he's singing that to Michael because Michael was all he had. But placing it that far along, well, that's another thing with the sequencing and everything like that is, but it would have been a great single, and you could pluck that one right out. That's like Andy said he played it at the wedding. Well, people probably didn't go, well, that doesn't sound like the rest of these songs. It sounds like a heartfelt ballad. And I think it would be a decent song for a wedding because, it's talking about being in a struggle and that other person is all you got. And apparently the heart is the place where you need to hold on to.
It's just like awesome. Like I said, I think it's an awesome power ballad.
Yeah, it could be romantic, but it's not necessarily, it's not like "I love you and I want to hold you." It's not something like that. It's basically something like I need you and you mean the world to me and stuff like that you could probably sing to anybody, if you felt that deeply about them. But it's not necessarily a romantic ballad. But I think if that had an outstanding video, which I've not seen an actual video produced of it, because I looked around for it and everything's showing me clips from the DVD. If it had had a decent video, it'd been really great. And it probably would have been a better hit.
There is a video. If you look on YouTube, there's a video of him with acoustic guitar sitting in like black tights, no shoes on his bare feet. No, I'm seriously. And it's like, and it's like a million candles around. And he's playing the songs. The videos the videos for the songs are not great. Really, I mean,
that's the problem. If it had a well-directed video, a well-produced video to go along with it, as good as the song is, you know, that's the thing. Is a great song with a crappy video is going to be a crappy song in the end.
I guess back but I guess by 1992, what were we getting anyways off of MTV?
Well, you were getting Alice in Chains on a Headbangers Ball, and I've already started an Alice in Chains fire in the past 2 weeks, so I'm not going to go any further with that. But you know, that's the thing about it, is it was dealing with grunge, and this probably would have been considered a decent grunge ballad. You know, it wasn't dirgy sounding, but it was melodramatic. I'm killing Andy here. No, wasn't new grunge. No, but I mean, it would have fit in with the times. You know, with what other metal bands were doing at the time.
Yeah, I just think it was
Boston bands like you know, Extreme, More Than Words. Yeah, this fits in well with that kind of, you know.
Oh, if Hold My Heart came out when they were, you know, I don't want to say in their prime, whatever, between Last Command or even inside the Electric Circus, it fits right in there. It fits inside with the Electric Circus. It has that 80s kind of feel to it. I still, you know, it's just a great song. I don't know. It just makes me think about that childhood, the 80s, or not childhood, you know, teenage years. That's all.
Yeah.
I don't know. I love it. And I love the original versions and I love Bob Kulick on this. I think his guitar work is really good.
I think Bob's guitar works better on the next album, but there you go. That's just a difference of opinion. But you know, let's talk about some of the other songs. You know, Dr. Rocker. I mean, that's a great song in terms of where it sets the story. But you know what? Every time I hear that or see that title, I'm like, I didn't think Blackie needed no doctor. Oh, I guess so.
Oh, good point.
There is a video. There's the video too with this song, right? There is the video. Well, unless it's on with the DVD combo now, right? Everybody knows who Dr. Rocker is. If you don't, I guess you weren't a kid of the 80s or the 90s, right? You know, I mean, you know, let's put it this way: when you get more money, more stuff, that's what happens, right? To some, not everybody, but some people take it to the next limit, right?
Well, it's like that Tom Petty video. God, what was that? The guy gets a guitar. It's like the same damn story. And I can't remember what the name of that Petty song is. But, you know, fame corrupts, as does power,
that's the one with Johnny Depp in it, right?
Oh, God.
Johnny Depp's the character in the video.
Yeah. You know, that's Dr. Rocker. I can do without that annoying kind of narration at the beginning. Tatiana and all that rubbish. Just...
you know,
I'm going to edit that out of my version that's going in my playlist. You know, I'm going to edit out the story.
You know, that's part of the whole thing with this album too that makes this story. And this is why I'm going to fight against you guys in a nice way about why this is better than when we go to ReIdolized, because of what Blackie did and didn't do. Why would you? And I understand why he took it out. I mean, I'm not a saint, but I don't swear like tons of times. But to take out the words that he took out for some of these songs later on and ReIdolized for the same songs that are done over, it just doesn't matter. It doesn't fit right, because there's no way they would just say, well, if you don't stop this partying, I'm going to leave you. Really? That's not how they would say it. They would say it like they would say it. If you don't get these and people out here,
right,
I'm done with it.
Right, but you also have to remember that Blackie had changed. Don't forget, his perspective has changed over the years, and he is no longer the same Blackie. There are certain songs from the early catalog that he will no longer play, and that's perfectly fine. He has evolved as himself, which, you know, I to be frank, I don't care one way or the other. You know, I'm happy to listen to this one, but when I listened to ReIdolized, I was like, wait, they changed something. And I then had to go back and say, well, okay, they changed that, they changed that, they changed, okay. And I'm like, okay, big deal. You know, it's not to the level now. I think there's pressure. in the current day and age, where in 1991 or the late 80s, remember Axl Rose, that song that caused a furor? It's the same thing. I don't think you can get away with that in the name of art particularly easily now when you're coming from a certain demographic. Other demographics are allowed to say whatever they want in music, but I think he played it safe. But I think also his perspective had changed to the point. It was other things that they changed in ReIdolized, because that kind of bothered me, but it also helped me because, again, he added in songs to flesh out areas that I thought worked, that helped me understand the story a little bit more than listening to the 16-minute story of Jonathan. It became a bit more fully fleshed out, but I do like the concise original version. And when I go back to it, once I prune this double CD down to the original tracks and just listen to it as is, I'm like, number one, as far as concept albums go, what did I have to kind of judge it against? I had to Kiss, Music from the Elder. Well, it's much better than that as a story, as a concept, and as an execution, because it actually makes sense. And he didn't cut out all that narration that explained the story like Kiss ended up doing. But does it compare to Tommy? Does it compare to, say, a Rush concept album? No, but it's a really, really good effort. And musically, it is so broad, it's stunning. I mean, some of these songs, my favorite song on the album, Chainsaw Charlie. I mean, you get a little bit.
Great song.
You get a little bit of every style of W.A.S.P in there. There's a middle section around 5 minutes where where he's almost going Iron Maiden as well with galloping bass. So I just love that song, and it's such a great story that is told within that 1 8-minute something piece of music.
And it's so ruckus that it could actually fit on the first album, in my opinion. It's just they're not pulling any punches on that one. It's just beat, 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 just coming out of the box swinging. So that's one I was going to mention. That was a really cool song.
Yeah,
and you could pluck that out as like a single too.
Yeah, the original version can go on the first W.A.S.P album, but the ReIdolized can't. Again, you might think it's silly, but back then that was the words. My name is Charlie Chainsaw. I'm a beep, beep, beep. that whole phrase.
And that's the thing is, I'd rather he changed the words to where they flowed right than actually because I had CDs with beeps in them. I had cassettes with beeps in them, or where they would silence a curse word or something like that. And I'll take a lyric rewrite any day of the week. And when it comes to lyric rewrites, this one is golden compared to Charlie Daniels' rewrite of Uneasy Rider. And if you've never heard that, go look up his new version of that because it's atrocious. He almost took the whole context out of the story about being a hippie getting chased by rednecks. But anyway, that was my big thing on the lyric changing. But I think it, musically, it definitely would have fit on the first album.
Yeah, but I mean, it's the point of unless you spoke like that and gave the truth, which he did. What it is people if they've never seen W.A.S.P or never listened to this album, this album it's the record company. Chainsaw Charlie. It's about the record company and this guy who's basically ripping people off. Ripping the bands off.
Mm-hmm.
Like record companies did. And Blackie was like all over it. It's just weird.
You mean they stopped that behavior?
No. Of course not. But I mean, they're pretty much
they
gone.
did when the internet happened.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's
well, it got worse, I guess. But yeah.
Again, I think it's the whole idea of maybe I'm just that way, man. This is the way I heard it. This is the way it is. It's kind of like, I don't even understand too. Like, then they re-released it before we even get to ReIdolized. They re-released Crimson Idol in 1996 as a double thing now, but it has the same songs on it except for disc 2, which You know,
Which,
I think it was,
you know, disc 2 is fantastic because it's got some of the live stuff from Donington. It's got the cover of When the Levee Breaks, which, to be perfectly honest, is way down at the bottom. You maybe will have to do a ranking of Wasp's cover versions, but it's way down there for me. And then the story of Jonathan. Yeah, I actually liked listening to that once. You know, just to hear Blackie tell the story of it. That's kind of neat. The live stuff's fantastic, and he had a great live band with him because Johnny Rod came back in to the picture, I believe, for the tour, and then he had Doug Blair on lead and Stet on drums. Frankie was out of the picture. But let's talk about some of the songs on ReIdolized before we, you know, kind of go back to maybe some of the live stuff from that. Because he added in Michael's song, which is mostly kind of musical, and I thought that was good. And I was debating whether I was going to say that I hate the guitars on the original version and was really happy with the guitar sound being made a little bit more traditional on ReIdolized. But I changed my mind on that. While it was really interesting to listen to ReIdolized and enjoy how, you know, some of the guitar tone was different, I want to go back to the original Bob version, and that is just it. That's how it's supposed to sound. That is how it was meant to sound, and I'm good with that. As for the rest of ReIdolized, a lot of the stuff is just filler. You know, like the piece, just trying to jam a song into the story. Showtime, I laughed my butt off at because it was just so pompous, and his voice acting was worse than mine, which I recently did some of. So, other than that, the only good thing about ReIdolized that I will say is Miss You. It's fantastic.
Thank you.
That's a great one.
It's fantastic on Golgotha, and I'm going to happily listen to it more on Golgotha. It's just fantastic song, period. So if he felt the need to, you know, because his albums don't get enough sales, to recycle that one and give it another shot in a slightly different form, in a different context, then fine with me. Bill, what's your take on some of the stuff on, ReIdolized?
Well, on the recycling thing, you know, it worked for Whitesnake because how many versions of "Here I Go Again" did he do? So why not let Blackie do it? Actually, I really like the ReIdolized version. Listening to, I mean, I've only listened to it front to back once, but you know, I threw the vinyl down, played all 4 sides, and I thought it fleshed out the story so much better. And it made the way back to our concept thing, where the one thing where I find a relation with like Tommy and Crimson Eye is the thematic points like feel me, hear me, touch me, you know, that part there from The Who. And then you have, you know, I don't want to be the Crimson Idol. And then there's another one that's where is that? There's a couple of the thematic points like that, but when they brought in those other tracks on ReIdolized, they threw a couple more of those in, and then they lengthened. Which song did they lengthen? I'm thinking it was "I Am One," where they brought in the "Long Live the King of Mercy" part. That gets brought in a couple points too. So they get peppered in there to where it kind of ties all the other songs together with them. And I thought that was a big difference in that, because I went through, I listened to the original version right after we signed off the last time, and I was listening to it. And then I went and listened to ReIdolized. What I had seen, I actually saw the DVD version on YouTube before getting the DVD. And I was sitting there going like, well, these songs are different and the lyrics are different too. Not just the point of, you know, dropping out the curse words or anything like that, but where they had done some of that lengthening in there from that version. And then you get ReIdolized, which is actually even more enhanced because the actual video, the DVD here, it is the same track listing as the original version. So you don't have any of that other expanded part in it. So it's kind of like, if this is ReIdolized, this should be ReIdolized because they spread everything out. But I really do like the clear concept of the whole thing. I think it's performed well. I've listened to it on Amazon Music. I've listened to the CD, and I don't know if there's something wrong with my CD or my CD player, but it took me forever to get through the misconceptions of me today. But it kept jumping backwards. I never had a CD jump backwards into a point. But all three of them are different in one way or the other, whether it's actual lyrical content, sequencing, or the performances versus the original. And I'm really not dissatisfied with any of them, but it's like where me and Andy were messaging a little earlier. He's like, what, you don't like the original version better? And it's kind of like, well, I don't think there's any really standoutish parts in comparison. I don't listen to the original version and go, ooh, that's a cool Bob Kulick part, because I don't think Bob Kulick is really defined. I think that anything Bob Kulick plays on the Crimson Idol, I think Chris Holmes could do the pretty good version of, if not better. So that's my outlook on that. I don't think he was exactly outstanding on the Crimson Idol. Go ahead, Andy.
You're making me cringe. Don't get me wrong. I don't have nothing with Blair or any of those guys to play on the album and stuff, But it's, I guess, when you hear an original, right, and then you listen to someone who's done it over, and you can hear the different guitar tones, different everything. So that's like listening to the original stuff from like Kiss playing, and then you hear those god awful remakes inside the Sonic CD.
Oh no!
You just
don't go there, please. No.
You just want to.
Jigoku Retsuden, will be discussed. Those re-records, and Def Leppard's done re-records, and you know what? All these bands that do re-records, I never stick with them, other than Whitesnake, because I do prefer the redone versions that they did of older songs on both the 1987 album, as it's called in many countries, or self-titled in others, and there was one on Slip of the Tongue as well from an earlier era. Those I do actually like, because they hair metaled them. They went from more of a Deep Purple blues into a metal zone in the late 80s, but I still listen to the original versions as well.
I'm going to jump in on that one, because I actually remember hearing Fool for Your Loving on the radio before 87. So back to Andy's point, that's why I like that version better, because I think they layered too much icing on the Slip of the Tongue version. And it's just kind of like, man, that was a great song. Why did they even fool with it? No pun intended. But when it comes to like a remake, I'm usually right with you, Andy. I'm usually like Jotsu Ritsetsen or whatever it is, Greg Troy will have a laugh at me trying to pronounce that one. But, those are horrible versions. But I think that ReIdolized is the best attempt at re-recording an album that I've ever heard. I'm usually totally against it.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's bad, but the tone and the sounds, for me personally, it's Bob. But I love Miss You. That is a great song, and it's not done by Bob. It's done by him. So you just kind of, so now that I Miss You, and I love Miss You, people are like, oh, that was on Gothic. But, well, originally it's supposed to be, but anyways. Oh, just on a side note, the bass player that plays for Whitesnake, I went to school with, he graduated 1 year underneath me. So that's my little tidbit.
Which bass player?
Which one? you looked at that band's family tree?
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot his name. He graduated like a year under me. He's been in the band forever now.
Okay, so he's current?
The current bass player.
Okay.
Been in there for a long time now. So anyway, I forgot his name off the top of my head, and people go like, oh my God, Andy, how you forget? Whatever.
Wait, which band was that? Whitesnake?
Yeah.
Okay.
So he's got the beard.
I've lost track of Whitesnake. I haven't had anything off them in a few years.
I agree with Bill, though. It's not bad. It's just that I'm so used to hearing the original for so many years it's embedded in me.
Yeah, and that for me is the
that.
same because again, I've mentioned how I skipped this and I didn't get until the 90s, but I'd gotten back into W.A.S.P and stayed with them from Still Not Black Enough when I went into a record store in Glasgow and Still Not Black Enough was there and they had I think some picture discs from Crimson and I went with Still Not Black Enough. And because of the guitar tone on that album and I've always enjoyed that album way more than just about any W.A.S.P album to have come since the 90s.
What are you doing? That's next.
Yeah, I know. But because of that, because of the similarities in the guitar, which obviously is there for a reason, is why at the end of the day, I'm more comfortable with the original version, even though I think there are some good songs added to the ReIdolized ones, which will stay in my playlist.
I can't listen. Well, I mean, I can. Anybody can. You can skip songs. I don't. When I want to listen to this, I want to, like Bill says, I want to listen to this. Get the hell out of my way. Leave me if alone, and I'm going to listen to this. You know what I mean? Again, this is one of those things you could, well, maybe, hold on to my heart. You'd be like, hey, you want to hear this? Bringing that up, hold on to my heart. I would pull this out, even if the wedding or somewhere else would say, hey, check out this tune. And they'd be like, people are like, hey, man, that's a really good tune. Who did that? And I'm like, and you tell them who did it. You're like, what? Who? It's the same thing with the kind of like a Kiss thing or anybody else. I mean, Kiss, I don't like them. Or I don't like W.A.S.P. But then you play a song that, you would never think that with them. And you'd be like, oh, my God, who's that? Oh, that came from W.A.S.P. What? What are you, crazy? I'm like, no, that's who it's from. No way, they can't do stuff like that. And I'm like, yeah, he can. So the guy can write. The guy's a talented. That's and again, Blackie can produce too, man. Blackie produced the original one. I mean, he can produce, unlike some other people we know. So. So you just felt the chick as I said that.
You just completely disappeared when you leaned over. That was awesome. It seems like you just vaporized.
Yeah, the person in question already hates me, so let's not go. Let's go into some final thoughts on this because we're getting.
Now I got a little bit more, but the one thing is with the number of songs associated with this project. Let's put it that way. How do we know that what is on ReIdolized wasn't originally fashioned for the Crimson Idol, and what pieces got plucked out? That's like, Brian Wilson with his Smile album. He couldn't get 1966 musicians to accomplish what he wanted to do, and then he went back later in the 2000s and had it done with a band that went back and fixed it. But I mean, what might he have had envisioned in the entire project? He could have had that entire ReIdolized story fashioned and then just was like, well, this will be a double CD. There's no way we're going to do this on your first album with this label, blah, blah, blah. Of course, it was probably Parlophone. If it was Capitol in the U.S., it was probably Parlophone with EMI before. I don't know who their English distributor was. But it makes you wonder, what did they piece out to make the first 10-track album, and how much of the story it may have hurt doing it?
Yeah, well, this was this was the last album on Capitol. So, I think Blackie has said that he had a bad relationship with the label at the time, that they weren't supportive of that sort of music at that time point. So he probably just left in the big guns. I wouldn't be surprised if there were bits and pieces that he had ideas of, but in terms of what studio time costs, I think he probably just pruned down the idea. But it took him 3 years to get to that point as well, when you think about how long he worked on it, and all those years that he had just disappeared for the most part. It wasn't like they were putting out a song on a soundtrack here and there. They were gone from the scene. They weren't in magazines, were they?
No, and it's because of the big G word that helped a little bit too, because if there was anything that was anti-grunge, it was definitely W.A.S.P. There was nothing W.A.S.P. that sounded grunge except for, what's the song I mentioned, Andy? Well, Hold On to My Heart. It could be a grunge ballad, but anyway.
Yeah, but
the funny thing is this, the DVD, this was shot and mixed in 1992. So why didn't this come out when the album came out? Because it could have been, maybe he wanted to do it as a package, or, I know back to my manager thing from the last episode is Smallwood and Taylor was still working with him on the Crimson Idol, and he gives them special thanks on ReIdolized. But it would have been the case where if this was shot in 1992 and a lot of the graphics may have been fixed up later, Smallwood and Taylor were still involved with him then. So why didn't it come out then? It could be the bad thing with the record company or whatever. But, that's one of the questions that's raised in my head since listening to all these.
Well, I saw the 25th anniversary of the tour, so I couldn't believe it. So, again, people might say, "Oh yeah, big deal." Back then, again, it's one of those things where you hit either word of mouth, or you knew somebody that knew somebody, or somehow down the line you end up finding out that, like, hey man, your band's playing somewhere. So I actually saw the 25th anniversary of the Crimson Idol, and I went to this place called the Webster Theater in Connecticut. So if anybody knows what I'm talking about, the Webster Theater in Connecticut, where that place is, man, I'll tell you right now, that place is in not a great area, and the parking lot was really, really small. If you didn't get in there, you weren't even supposed to park on the streets, and if you did, your car would get broken into, or towed. That place was like bad news, but great place to see a lot of bands. I know a lot of heavy metal bands went there in the day, but that's one of the times I went to Webster Theater. And actually, yes, I do have a story, but we can wait that to another time, where my hot rod, what I call it, was my 1970 Nova, souped up Nova, and I bought when I was 16, basically got towed that night when we came out of W.A.S.P. Out of this show, too. I went from being super like, oh my God, I just had the great time. I can't believe they just did the whole album from top to bottom. The whole original from top to bottom. I was so excited. And I cried when I heard the Idol song. I couldn't believe it actually happened. And all of a sudden I get out, and there's like 5 of us guys, and we're like, I parked my car down the street at a supermarket with the lights on just to, make sure when you get it was gone. And I was totally freaking out. The story gets worse. It gets crazy. There's corruption everywhere. The towing takes it to the place of the cops. Everybody knew everything. Is weird. Chasing down a cop. My car got stolen. Where are you from? I'm from Massachusetts. He goes, well, I probably know where your car is. Call the cop, gets me in the car. Had to go. I'm like, we call the place up. He's like, yeah, it's going to cost you $250 to get your car out. Are you shitting me? For like 15 minutes? Go to the bank. Try to take out as much money you can get ATM. Don't have that kind of money with me at the time. Get there. Cop lets us out. Lets me out. Goes up to the truck. I go up to where they get one of those lift trucks. I can see my car sitting there. Now, this is my car. This isn't a piece of shit. This is my 70 Nova. So, it was really nice. All chrome inside. And I worked hard on that, whatever. But I literally jump up on the truck to pay the guy, because the guy told me how much money over the phone. Go to give him the money, and the guy goes, how much money you got on you? I'm like, what? He goes, how much money you got in your wallet? And I go, I have the money. Well, no, how much more you got on you? It was seriously, I'm like, are you kidding me?
That's called robbery.
Dude, man, I was like, but you understand, this is in 2005. I was just like I'm like, oh my God, what do I do? This guy has my car in the place, and the cops there like 50 feet, 20 feet, 30 feet away with the rest of my friends, and I think it was my brother was with too, in the car. And all of a sudden I'm like, are you kidding me, dude? Now I'm like hopped up, like on the thing, because it's a big truck, right? And I'm like, dude, give me my car. And the guy's like, how much money's in your wallet? Dude, I don't have any more money. He's like, well, you're not going to get your car. I jumped down, looked at the cops, started screaming. My voice carries. So all the people say, hey, do you scream all the time on these podcasts? My voice carries. Even when I'm not.
Really? Never noticed.
My voice carries. I can't help it.
Yeah, I mean, come on. He's so shy. Try to get him to speak's impossible.
Yeah. So I'm seriously, man, this story. And so all of a sudden, I turn around, I run back to the cops car. I'm like, this beep, 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 won't give me my car back. He's like, what do you mean? He wants more money from me, and I don't have any more money. So I'm like, you got to take me back to another ATM cop? And the guy goes, no. And of course, one of my friends brought some guy that I didn't know. First time I met him, and the guy was a drunk asshole. So he's mouthing off to the cop at the same time in the back seat. The guy's like, oh my God. So the cop, and then finally the cop says, let the kid have his car. Let the kid have his car. So we're in the car, in the cop car. I'm in the front seat, and the rest of the guys are in the back seat. And the other friend who brought this friend says, oh, he's not going to drink. If he drink, he becomes an asshole. If he doesn't drink, whatever, he's fine. Well, the guy got totally wasted because me and a couple other people went down to the pit, and he stayed up in the bar and drank. And he's mouthing off to the cop in the back of the cop seat. And I'm like, dude, just take the kid. And they're like, no, we don't even want him. I'm like, just take him away. So anyways, it was really scary. It was really bad. And I said some stuff. Probably I would have been arrested back then nowadays, because I basically said, dude, I know where this place is. I'm going to go get my father. We're going to come back down it, and I'm going to burn your place down. And that's when the cop said, let the kid have his car. Because I said, I'm serious. I'm going to come back down here with some people and my father and some people that you don't want to admit, you don't want to know, and I'm going to burn your place down. Now that I know where you are. They gave me the car back. So anyways, so that was my great, great night. So anyways, the Webster Theater in Connecticut, and here's the ticket stub. Now these bands open up for W.A.S.P. I don't know if anybody has heard. It's a band called Wednesdays 13. I don't know if you guys heard of the band.
That sounds familiar.
It does sound
someone
familiar.
was a guitarist in that band.
They were starting to get a little popular. I don't even know if they're around anymore. But I know they were kind of popular around here because they came from around this area, I think, pretty sure. Stephen Piercy from Rat was opening up too. And L.A. Guns with Riley in it.
Lord.
Imagine that. That's the line. And then W.A.S.P. I mean, come on, man. For $20. So with
it's amazing there was any time left.
Yeah, for them to do the whole album, and then they did a few songs afterwards. But Stephen Piercy, I mean, I've only got one of his solo albums, Before and Laughter. Pretty good. Obviously, L.A. Guns is fantastic. And Wednesday
Now,
13,
Julian,
Murder Dolls is the connection I was thinking of with that band.
okay. Now I have a W.A.S.P. tragedy too. Actually, I saw the first anniversary of the Crimson Idol tour on September 4th, 92 at Bogart's in Cincinnati. And I was in a band that we had just recently split up, but we were close friends. And the bass player, JC, peace to your brother, he had moved down a block away from Bogart's, and him and his roommate, we'll call him that, they invited us down to come down and see W.A.S.P. and stay the night. And him living down there, he had the key on when happy hours started and when they stopped. And that W.A.S.P. show happened to be the one concert I was ever the most inebriated at. I don't remember a single drop of it. I do remember downtown Cincinnati in the Clifton area. They call it the Hills, the Clifton, because it's kind of like a miniature, teensy tiny version of San Francisco where everything's on a hill. So if you don't have a parking brake, you don't have a car anymore. But so to go from Vine Street down behind Bogart's, you had to go down a slope. And I remember nearly tumbling down that slope trying to, because it was always fashionable to, okay, we're out of the concert, let's go back and see if they'll meet us at the bus or something like that. And I've met a couple bands back there like that before, but W.A.S.P. wasn't one of those that happened. But that's the last show that I got so inebriated that I was like, I wasted my ticket. Yeah, I had a good time with my friends, but I really wasted my ticket on seeing the band because I don't remember a single note of the whole show. I do remember that I was pissed because Bob Kulick wasn't there. That was about the only thing I can remember about the whole night as far as the band's concerned.
Well, that's the thing too. When I saw, by then, you knew who the band was because it was 2005 when the 25th anniversary tour of it. So I knew the band back then. But you want to see something really scary though, and only for you guys. And this is really scary. from that
As long
night.
as you ain't taking any clothing off.
No. So, anyways, for some strange reason, during that time, everybody's like, oh, how people go, oh, life changes and all this crap in your world, and you have to make changes, and this would be better for you, and you got to start a new life and all that. Well, for some strange reason, and I don't know why, I did a kiss. Oops. I decided, I guess in the long run, it's my choice. So I decided, and I have 2 pictures I got to show you guys. Like you said, you go down to Connecticut, you go down to Webster Theater. If you got in there early enough, if you knew some of the guys in the W.A.S.P band at the time, they would kind of roam around, because most people like, I don't know them. Most people didn't know unless you're like, oh, Blackie Lawson, Chris Holmes, and that's about it, right? But nobody knew it was like Mike Duda, right? Well, here's a picture of me and Mike. Now, this is really me. This is in 2005, and I decided to do a kiss thing. Why I say that? Because look, this is me now, and I did it. Oops! I actually cut all my hair off, and that's Mike.
That is scary.
Now that's Mike next to me. And when I went up to Mike, because now we're Connecticut, he's got like the red sock shirt on. I'm like, hey, Mike, can I have a picture with you? He looks at me, goes, how do you know me? I'm like, well, you're in W.A.S.P, dude. He's like, and you know me? That's what, I mean? So some people didn't even recognize, and here is the picture of me with Mr. Drummer. So there's my ugly bug.
Take it back just a little bit, Andy.
Oh, a little bit? I'm sorry. I'm trying to.
Yeah, that's good right there.
Yeah, perfect.
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah, so there it is.
I'm pretty sure the golf course was a couple miles to the left.
Even though I'm wearing the Last Command shirt, which I could still fit on at the time, so I wore it. And I did get a drumstick. I got a drumstick that night. So I was, awesome. I couldn't believe it though that I was actually hearing the whole Crimson Idol from CD from top to bottom, and then they would play some of the hits. Like I Want to Be Somebody, F Like a Beast, whatever they played that night. So they did play, some of like Blind in Texas and stuff after they were done. But it was funny during the intermission because there was so many bands, whether 13, Steve Piercy, LA Guns, so I went out to look to see if they had anything, any merch and all that. They don't have anything. I'm like, what the hell is going on again? There's like no merch. I'm like, why isn't Blackie and company putting out or selling merch? But it was funny. Stephen Riley sees my shirt, and I'm going to go to the bathroom, number one. No, just say that. So anyways, I'm going to go there, and Stephen Riley sees the shirt and goes, hey, man, look at that dude's shirt. Unbelievable. Grabs the other guy in LA Guns, and he goes, hey, dude, turn around. And I'm just like, okay. And I'm like, what? He's like, wow, man, we love your shirt. And Riley's like, look at that shirt, man.
There's another album cover I'm not on.
Yeah. It was just kind of mind-blowing, to see some of this stuff. I mean, most people, if you could see that many bands, W.A.S.P, LA Guns, Stephen Piercy, and Wednesday 13, all for 20, with the church service charge rate, $25 in 2005. Yeah.
Back in the old days when you could actually go to a concert. It
cost me more than $25 that night because my car got towed. So
yeah, you got a drumstick.
Yeah, but it doesn't say his name on it, so I have to keep remembering to like put it with. One of my friends, she plays the drums. She came up, a couple of weeks ago, poking around and stuff because she's a huge Kiss fan like me, and she had a ton of Kiss stuff at one point. And actually, I feel sad is that her house burned down, so she lost every single thing. And she had a huge collecting since she was a kid because we lived on the same street. She had lost everything, so by doubles or triples, I've been giving it to her left and here and there and stuff like that. But she came up and she was a really pretty good drummer. And she saw these, and she still drums one of those pad things, whatever. She's like, man, who the hell plays this thick of a drumstick? And I'm like, hey, what's his name did? I know.
It's like a tree.
Yeah. She's like, holy crap. But I'm like, hey.
All right. We're going to wrap this one up because that's some good stories. I want to find a good recording of the 2007-2008 25th anniversary tour, because, the 92 set only included 5 or 6 songs from the album. I do like that set because it had Hellion and On Your Knees in it, but I do want to see that greatest one, the greatest hit set at the end of the album, because they didn't come out to California, and I probably wouldn't have gone if they had anyway, because from the looks of the clubs that they were playing, it would have been probably the Regency or even worse in San Fran. So,
well, the thing about the live show is, I think that when I saw them in '92, I can't remember. Like I said, I can't remember what they played, but I remember not being very engaged with what was going on. I had plenty of time to drink apparently, but I don't remember being very engaged at the show, because sometimes when you get that adrenaline rush and it doesn't matter how much you drank, you end up crashing later or something like that. But it didn't really pump me up, and that was a disappointing thing about it, because I love the band so much.
Yeah.
Well, I got one more note on that, because Bill had mentioned that why didn't they come out with the DVD with the music and stuff? When I went to the 25th anniversary of that, they were wicked strict. They were just like about not videotaping, not taking pictures, because they were going to videotape pictures, and they were going to release, the whole, like, the ReIdolized.
And here it is.
Yeah. But, no, I'm seriously though. They were really strict about getting pictures, taking pictures. I mean, it was brutal. They were like, you got to they were catching people in the audience. They were like, Blackie would look at people. I don't know if it was more Black, but they were like looking at people, and they were like, and they would get the guards, and the guards would go out and just like rip the cameras away from them. I mean, they were really brutal at the time about absolutely no videotaping, no photos, none of that stuff.
Well, and I remember getting a shakedown. I mean, I remember seeing people get shook down at a concert, and I wanted nothing to do with it, so I never bothered risking it. I never bothered trying to sneak anything in.
So
wrap it up while we got a chance, Julian.
Yeah, and on that note, I'll plead the fifth. So there we go. That's our thoughts on Crimson Idol.
You got Wasp ones? Oh yeah, you didn't go. I'd say if you had some Wasp ones, man. Nope.
All right, we're leaving it there. That's our thoughts on Crimson Idol. What do you think about it? What do you think about ReIdolized? What are some of your favorite songs from it? What should they have done? Should Blackie do this again? Yeah, why not? By the time the concert halls open back up, maybe he can have a new album out. And 2022 30th anniversary, why the heck not? Blackie, give it some thought. All right, so now from Bill, from Andy, myself, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Bye now. Thank you for watching or listening to this episode. Be sure to subscribe to us, like us, or even leave us a review. You can find us and join the conversation on Facebook.